Welcome to the Endo Belly Girl Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Chavez. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and restorative wellness practitioner on a mission to change the way that we support women with endometriosis. Endo is a full-body disease that impacts your mind, body, and spirit in countless ways that aren't often addressed the way that women truly deserve. We are here to talk about all of it. Please keep in mind that the content of this show has been created for educational purposes only and should never be used as a replacement for medical diagnosis or treatment. Hey, my friend, and welcome back to the Endo Belly Girl Podcast. If you have ever been told that birth control is your only option for endo and that there's nothing else that you can do, you're not alone. So many women come to me after years of being dismissed, medicated, and still in pain because no one ever looked deeper. So today, we're going to explore the real root causes of endo that your doctor likely never mentioned. And spoiler, it's not just your hormones. In fact, hormone imbalance is almost always a symptom of something else going on in your body. So let's talk about what that something else could be. Super excited to dig into this one today. I'm Alyssa Chavez, your host and friendly neighborhood functional nutritionist specializing in endo. And I feel like this episode really came about because this is a conversation that I have with people every single day. New clients, new prospective clients. I feel like so many people have this story of, I have been diagnosed with endometriosis, and the one and only option that I have been offered is birth control or some kind of medication. And I just feel like there needs to be a deeper, bigger conversation about this. And that, my friend, is what we're going to do today. Yay! So first, you know I love my myths versus truths, so we're going to dig into a few of those today. Myth number 1, birth control fixes endo. The truth: birth control might suppress your symptoms temporarily, but it doesn't address the underlying inflammation, immune dysfunction, or gut issues that are driving the disease. Myth number 2, endometriosis is a hormone problem. The truth: hormones can influence symptoms, but endo is actually a complex condition involving the immune system, chronic inflammation, and so much more. Hormone imbalance is often a result of deeper imbalances. And myth number 3, if your labs are normal, you're fine. The truth is that standard labs often miss key dysfunctions like nutrient depletion, blood sugar dysregulation, or chronic infections, and functional testing helps to tell a different story. Now, I wanted to touch base on this before we really dive into this episode today because I have found that there are many people out there in the endo world, including other providers and practitioners, who don't believe in a, quote, root cause for endo. I have received pushback on social media when I talk about a root cause approach. I've received messages and comments, and so I just wanted to talk about that before we really dig into what that means. So, for starters, I want to say that I don't believe that there is one root cause for endo, and I think that that's where a lot of this misconception comes in. I think that that really oversimplifies a very complex disease if you're looking for just one thing to fix. I believe that endometriosis is multifactorial, it's complex, there's a lot happening there. But that doesn't mean that you can't take a root cause approach. It's just that there might be more than one root. The way I think of it is that, have you ever pulled up a weed, for example? Because those are the things we tend to pull out by the roots. I remember my mom as a kid, when she would make me go out in the backyard and pull weed, she would always say, make sure that you pull it out by the root so it doesn't grow back. And so I remember turning it over and looking at those roots, and the roots were kind of going everywhere, right? They would go all different directions. There were many of them. It wasn't just one singular root going into the ground. It goes all different directions. And so I like to use that analogy when it comes to endo. It's not just one thing. There are multiple roots, but it doesn't mean that there aren't places that we can look. There aren't things that we can do to help to support your body. So that's my little soapbox for the day. Not really, because we're just getting started. So first of all, I want to talk about why the conventional approach to endometriosis falls short. Now, I always like to put the disclaimer in that conventional medicine has its place. By no means am I going to tell you to fire all of your doctors immediately and never go back. Not at all. I actually really like to, when I work with my one-on-one clients, I like to work in conjunction with their doctors. And I believe that the two systems can really complement each other. I just feel like the conventional medical model doesn't offer everything that you might need as an endo warrior. And so I just want to touch base on that a little bit. First of all, like I said earlier, the story that I so often hear from women coming to me who have endometriosis, the most frequent frustration is that they're going into their doctors and they're being offered birth control, they're being offered painkillers, and maybe some surgery. And that's really it. They're not really getting any investigation as to why their symptoms are happening or why they might be worsening. And that I just think is not really serving endo warriors as deeply as it could be. I just feel like there's more to the story, right? Nobody has endometriosis. We may not know everything about the disease, but I think we can all agree that you don't have endometriosis because your body is lacking in birth control. Like that's that doesn't quite make sense to me. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why that might not be the end-all be-all solution that we're often taught. I also want to circle back. I'm not going to go deep into this today because we just talked about this a couple episodes ago. So if you want to go back to episode number 83, it was just 2 episodes back. That one was called Normal Labs, No Answers. And we really dug deep into the challenge people run into where their labs are all coming back, quote unquote, normal, but they're still feeling terrible. And why does that happen? And what's the issue there? So I just wanted to say that's something that happens a lot. I notice that happening a lot. And that's where the functional interpretation of labs / just additional functional labs can be really powerful. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, go back to episode 83 to hear more about why your normal labs might not actually be normal. And, I also feel like in the conventional medical world, it's very common for people to be dismissed, for people's pain to not be listened to. I know that's another very common frustration that I hear. Now, circling back to the birth control piece, just because I know that that's probably the most common solution that people are offered within the conventional medical model. And I just wanted to share a quote by Dr. Laura Briden. I'm going to mention her a few times in this episode. If you've never heard of her, she's fantastic. She is a naturopathic doctor based out of, I believe she's out of New Zealand. It might be Australia, but I think it's New Zealand. I should really know this. She's from down under and just extremely intelligent and just has spent many, many years studying hormones and all the things. She has a book called The Period Repair Manual. That was one of the early books that I read when I was first, following my own journey. And I've just really followed her work ever since. And she does talk a lot about endometriosis and all of that. So her commentary about birth control for endo is that, and this is a direct quote from Dr. Laura Briden, she says, it's the wrong tool for the job. We're treating an immune disease by shutting down hormones. So in other words, it's not that birth control is just overall a bad thing. I think that there are many instances where it can be supportive, it can fit into your picture in some capacity or another, but it's just you're trying to support an immune disease by looking at the hormone piece of it, and that's only a small piece of the puzzle. Remember, the goal of birth control is to shut down your body's natural production of estrogen, and sometimes progesterone as well, depending on the type of birth control. And this is primarily for hormonal birth control. I should specify that. Hormonal birth control, because in case you are unaware of this, hormonal birth control does not contain natural hormones. It contains synthetic forms of the hormones. So it's a synthetic form of estrogen, which blocks the natural hormone receptor sites so that your body no longer actually produces natural estrogen. Now, the thought process behind that is that estrogen feeds endometriosis. So when we shut down estrogen, we're shutting down the continued growth of endo. However, what they don't tell you is that estrogen has a ton of health benefits in your body that you are missing out on when you don't have it. And so it's kind of you're helping on one side, but maybe harming things in another side of your body. Now, remember, my goal here is not to discourage you from using birth control. My goal is to help you to make the most informed decision for your own body of what's going to really work well for you. And just understanding the effects that these medications have in your body, because I just think that that's not a conversation that's often had. I know I wasn't told that for all the years that I was on birth control. And I also want to remind you that estrogen can fuel endometriosis, but it doesn't cause endometriosis. We've talked about that multiple times on past episodes. So if the problem is actually chronic inflammation and immune dysfunction, what you really want to do is to stabilize the immune system and to support the immune health. And we're going to dig into what that really looks like today. And other reminder, hormones are never the root cause of anything. Hormones are simply a sign of deeper imbalance. If there's imbalance in the hormones, it's telling us that there's a deeper imbalance somewhere else in your body. So the real healing actually happens when we ask the question, what is throwing off the hormones in the first place? So that's really my thought process behind supporting endometriosis. Now, my belief, just so that we're super clear on this, my belief is that the medical system is great for acute issues, which can be things like broken bones, active infections, or even something like needing excision surgery for endometriosis. Is that necessary in some situations? Absolutely. And please visit a licensed medical doctor when you need something like that. However, endometriosis is a chronic illness, and I just believe that chronic illness requires so much more time, energy, and individualization than the conventional medical model can offer. And that, my friend, is where functional work really shines. Okay? So let's kind of shift gears here then and talk about what are the real root causes for endometriosis. And all of this, by the way, that I'm going to share with you today, it's based on research and evidence. There's actually tons of research out there about this, more so than we're led to believe, and also based on my own clinical experience, as well as many other practitioners' clinical experience and what we actually see working for clients who are getting results. So again, I don't actually believe that there is one root cause for endometriosis. I believe that it's multifactorial, it's complex. It's likely to be more than one of these factors, plus even possibly others that aren't on the list. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but these are really the key factors that I have found to be really powerful for endo warriors, and it's definitely an excellent starting point. So, what are these root causes that you speak of, Alyssa? Let's dive in. Number 1 on my list, immune system dysfunction. Endometriosis is increasingly being recognized as involving immune dysregulation. There are pieces in place like mast cells, histamine, and poor immune surveillance that all play a role. Now, there is even some debate out there as to whether or not endometriosis is an autoimmune condition. From what I have seen, from what I understand, it doesn't appear to be a true autoimmune condition. However, it does seem to share some similarities, and there definitely is an immune component to it. Now, I mentioned Dr. Laura Briden a little bit ago. Just wanted to share another little quote from her in relation to this. she said you have to have a certain kind of immune system to develop this disease. And when we're talking what that certain kind of immune system is, it's a type of immune system that's just kind of primed to go off the rails and activate inflammation. And part of that's related to genetics, although more importantly, we come back to the idea of epigenetics. I think I've talked about this a little bit in the podcast in the past, but basically the way that I think of epigenetics is that genetics, like the DNA that you inherit, loads the gun, and the environmental factors pull the trigger. So just having certain genes doesn't cause you to have disease of any kind. However, it can kind of predispose you. And then when we combine that with, lifestyle factors and environment and, everything going on in and around your body, that's what can end up pulling the trigger to now you have a full-blown disease. Now, I know there's a lot of conversation around there talking about that when you hear things like that we're just blaming you for being sick. No. For starters, I'm an endo warrior myself, and I do not find it to be healthy or helpful in any way to sit over here and blame myself for making this disease happen. Absolutely not. You don't know what you don't know. And secondly, looking into the past of what's happened before in your life and kind of going back and analyzing all the things that have happened that might have led you to this point is not a helpful or a healthy activity. Instead, let's just focus on looking forward, looking at what we can do, moving on ahead to support your endo health. And that's really the part that matters, because looking at where you came from, why you are where you are now, it's just, there's no point in that. It's not going to be helpful for you. Now, I do want to mention here that I did an episode, this was a while back. This is an old episode. We're going to really take a journey backwards in time. But one of my first episodes, episode 5, is called What is Endometriosis Really? And we dug into all of the things relating to what endometriosis really is, what the research is saying about that, and what we really do understand, because we understand a lot more than we're led to believe in general in the endo communities. I'll link to that in the show notes. That's episode 5. If you want to go back and check that one out, you can find that in the show notes. I want to mention also that when it comes to these immune system piece of it, I do also see in my practice a lot of crossover with histamine issues. I actually just did a whole episode on that very recently. That was episode number 82. I will also link to that in the show notes. But we talked about all things histamine and how to support that. But just the fact that we see so many histamine issues along with endometriosis kind of gives us an idea of that immune system component. And there's also a lot of studies looking at mast cells and macrophages, which are all types of cells that are related to the immune health, as well as T regulatory cells that are being looked at in relation to endometriosis. So those T regulatory cells in particular, what kind of the pattern that we're seeing is that when there's a dysregulated immune response happening in the body, that leads to decreased T regulatory cells. And when we have decreased T regulatory cells, that can lead to exaggerated local inflammation, and that can end up facilitating endoprogression. So it's kind of just a cyclical process there. And then also, your immune system should be cleaning up debris in your body, including what ends up becoming endometriosis lesions. And in the case of most women with endometriosis, your immune system is just not doing that job. It might be completely overwhelmed. It might be just wiped out for whatever reason, and that reason can be individual. Your body is not going in and cleaning up that debris, and that's where it can build up and lead to these larger lesions that people experience. So this, my friend, is where functional testing really comes into play. So, for example, on blood work, and oftentimes people, when I'm working with a client, they may even already have recent blood work. I'm just looking at it from a different perspective, from the functional approach. I'm looking at blood work for where do we want it to be for optimal health. So I'll look at things like even the basics, your complete blood count with differential. I will look at inflammatory markers like homocysteine and C-reactive protein. Those are just some of the things that I'll look at to get an idea of what's happening with immune health / inflammation, because that helps just give us an idea of what's going on. I also like to look on stool testing, which I use very frequently in my practice. I like to look at markers like secretory IgA and calprotectin, which again look at some immune health and inflammation. So that's where that functional testing can really shine through, just things that might be missed otherwise. Okay, so that was a lot about the immune system. That's kind of the biggest place that I look with endo warriors and just why that immune system might be acting up. Chronic inflammation is the second thing on my list as far as when we're looking at kind of those individual root causes that I always like to explore with endo warriors. So endometriosis is an inflammatory disease, and if inflammation isn't addressed at its root, you may continue to have pain. Now, the real question here is what's causing the chronic inflammation, and that can be something like an active infection, maybe bacteria, fungi, parasites. It can be blood sugar dysregulation. It can be related to diet, nutrient deficiencies. There's not just one reason that you might be inflamed. There's a lot of things. So that's where I like to do what I call inflammation hunting, where I'm going out using tools like functional testing to see what's going on in your body, what's contributing to inflammation in your unique body, and taking it from there. Next on the list of root causes of endo, and again, these are all pieces of the puzzle, not the one end all be all thing, but definitely nutrient deficiencies are a part of it. I could go through a whole list here, but I'm going to go with the foundations, which are magnesium, iron, zinc, vitamin D, even B vitamins, some of those nutrients that are commonly depleted and vital, by the way, for hormone health and healing. I did record a whole episode on this pretty recently, episode 63, which was the top 6 nutrients for endo warriors. I will also link that in the show notes. You're going to have all kinds of fun places to explore if you want to learn more about any of these individual topics. Also, blood sugar imbalance is next on my list because fluctuations in blood sugar can really worsen inflammation and can heavily impact your hormones. Many people don't really realize how much their blood sugar is tied to their hormone health. And keeping blood sugar stable throughout the day can actually make an enormous impact on those healthy hormones. So I, surprise, also did a full episode on that a while back. That one was episode number 21 called Blood Sugar, the Key to Hormonal Balance. And I will also link to that in the show notes. You've got like a whole playlist here, my friend, to expand on this episode. So enjoy that. Next on my list, underlying infections. That can be things like gut dysbiosis, maybe small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, candida or yeast, parasites. Anything like that going on in the gut can really work to drive immune dysfunction and inflammation. So my very favorite tool with that is the GI map. It's a stool test. It's very sensitive and allows us to see what's really going on in your gut. Super key piece of the puzzle for endo warriors. I've actually done many episodes on gut health in the past, so I didn't even know where to begin on that, but there's a lot. Maybe I need to put together a playlist just for the gut-related episodes, because I feel like there's a few of those. All right, and then last on my list for today is chronic stress and nervous system dysregulation. This is something that I'm starting to study more and more. In fact, I'm currently working on yet another certification to add to my practice where I'm going to be adding more tools to help people with nervous system regulation and just mindset and beliefs and all the things, because what I find is that when your body is in fight or flight mode 24/7, healing in your body just gets pushed to the back burner. And so that can really impact the way that you feel, because a body that's chronically stressed is going to have a hard time finding the resources to be able to heal. And stress really impacts your immune system. Have you ever had an experience where you've gotten sick either during or right after a stressful event in your life? I think most of us have experienced that at some point. I know I have. And so that can really impact, your health of your immune system, your inflammation. I know I talked about this on a recent episode too, how Sometimes even when you're under a lot of stress, your physical pain starts to increase. I mean, I really fully believe that every cell in your body listens to your thoughts. I'm going to say that one more time. Every cell in your body listens to your thoughts. And I know we're kind of diving into a whole other category here. We're going to talk about this more on a later date. Don't you worry. But I just think it's something important to be aware of. So if you're chronically thinking about how broken your body is and all the things going wrong in your body's going to listen to that. What if you took moments of gratitude for your body? You took time to really notice the things that are going well in your body. What if you did that? Just a thought. Because your nervous system, my friend, does impact your whole body as well. Your nervous system heavily impacts your digestive system. Your nervous system impacts your immune system, your reproductive system, all the things. Because guess what? When your body feels like it's under so much stress, it's not going to prioritize things like digesting food or getting ready to reproduce. No, your body's going to be all hands on deck to fight or to run away. That's what your body's thinking about. So helping our bodies to feel safe, to calm your nervous system, incredibly powerful tools for your overall health. Okay, so just a quick recap of that. The top things that I see, again, not the only things, but the top things that I see as being a root cause for endo: immune system dysfunction, chronic inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, blood sugar imbalance, underlying infections, and chronic stress and nervous system dysregulation. Those are really those top 6 things that I see that really, really move the needle when it comes to endometriosis. So there you go, my friend. So what do you do with this episode? Where do you go from here? I would say a good place to start is just starting to track your symptoms alongside your meals, your stress, your sleep, your menstrual cycles. Just start to look for patterns. Where can you make some connections? What's happening in your body, in your environment, in your diet, that you're starting to notice a difference in how you're feeling in general? That can be a good indicator of what places you might want to look. And my second piece of advice here is to start to ask better questions. Instead of asking, what can I take to make this go away? Instead, start asking, why is this happening? And sometimes that may be several layers deep, right? Why is that happening? Okay, why is that happening? Okay, why is that happening? And it may require some digging deeper. That's really the work that I do as a functional practitioner. So one thing that you can certainly consider is doing some functional testing to uncover what's maybe your standard labs haven't looked at. You could even schedule a free consultation with me. I offer free 30-minute consultations where we can kind of chat through what that might look like for you. You can find the link in your show notes. Just a heads up on that, I am right at this point in time starting to really fill up with one-on-one clients. It's just kind of that time of year when I seem to be getting busy. So if this is something you've been thinking about, like, oh my gosh, I really would love to do this type of work, and you've been kind of contemplating in the back of my mind, this, my friend, is your sign that now's the time before all of those slots fill up, because I am only one human being. I only have so much bandwidth, and I want to be able to be fully present with my client. That is incredibly important to me. So I have a limit, So I'd love to see you. I'd love to chat with you. And also just support your body daily by creating habits that are really conducive to healing: anti-inflammatory foods, stress-reducing practices, focusing on your gut health and nervous system support. And of course, those are very wide topics. I know that's a lot of things, but these are all things that we've talked about in past episodes and we'll continue to talk about in future episodes. So if you're new to the podcast, maybe go back and listen to some old episodes. If you've listened to everything, awesome. I love you. Congratulations. If you haven't left me a review yet, please do. I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. As I've said before, this can be a lonely thing. I'm recording this podcast by myself right now, and I absolutely love to hear from you. So take a moment to hit pause and just write a quick review. Let me know what you think of the podcast. I would love to hear from you. All right, my friend, that's all I have for today. I hope you have the most wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. If you loved what you heard, Be sure to share with a friend and subscribe so that you can keep coming back for more. If you are ready to take the next step towards getting to the root cause of your endo symptoms like endo belly, pain, fatigue, and so much more, you need to download my free ultimate guide to building your own endometriosis diet. You can find the link in the show notes or at www.endobellygirl.com. Until next time, my friend.